guide a commercial-made FPV drone, first-person view drone, that you could buy and still can buy anywhere online on Amazon with their explosive, sometimes homemade, sometimes industrial made, attached to it in order to drop this explosive on a civilian. Pilots could see very well their targets. They see it's an older woman, they see it's a pregnant woman, they see it's a young woman, a mother on her bike, they see it's a child. And like I reported to you before, there were many cases when they were training on dogs and even on goats, not just killing civilians, but also setting residential areas on fire by dropping incendiary devices, also remote mining by dropping banned anti-infantry mines. These are not just crimes, but also crimes against humanity.
Hi there, and welcome to the Byline podcast from the Byline Times with me, Adrian Goldberg, welcoming back Zarina Zabrisky, who, as I'm sure you'll know, has been reporting for Byline Times from the frontline in Ukraine. Zarina first told us about Russia's human safari drone warfare last August. Now her observations have been backed by both the United Nations and Human Rights Watch, who have recognised these attacks on Ukrainian civilians as war crimes. Meantime, Ukraine's own drone capability was demonstrated by its astonishing, audacious attack, which destroyed at least 13 Russian bombers. The so-called spiderweb operation was 18 months in the making and struck at airfields deep inside Russia. Zarina's also going to be telling us about why she's back in the United States. Zarina, first tell us about the human safari, because this was a chilling story you brought to us about the targeting of innocent civilians by Russian drones. The first I ever heard about that was your reporting on this podcast. And as I mentioned, it's now been recognized by Human Rights Watch and the United Nations as a war crime.
Yes, and Adrian, I want to thank you and the whole Byline team. We were the first one to break the story. It was on the 29th of July. And I have to say that my two major newspapers, Byline Times and Euromaidan Press, who actually cooperate sometimes, were the only two newspapers, and of course Byline Radio and Byline TV, who did not question it, did not doubt my reports. There was also Philip Itner, who is on the edge, who knows me for several decades. So he didn't question, he ran a show. But that was it. So I was trying to bring to the world something truly horrible. And I'm not judging the editors who refuse to believe it, because the crime is really horrendous. And if still you haven't heard about it, and I'm sorry to bring it to you and to bring it to you again if you've heard about it, the crime is horrifying and made everybody's hair stand on end if you have normal psyche, not traumatized, because a remote pilot stationed, in our case in Kherson city, across the Dnipro River, within the vicinity anywhere from 5 to, by now, about 30 kilometers, can see very well through the goggles how he, most times we know it is usually a male pilot, but supposedly there could be a female pilot on the Russian side as well, guide a commercial-made FPV drone, first-person view drone, that you could buy and still can buy anywhere online on Amazon to, say, take pictures of your wedding or sports event with their explosive, sometimes homemade, sometimes industrial made, attached to it in order to drop this explosive on a civilian. And when I say civilian, the pilots could see very well their targets. They see it's an older woman, they see it's a pregnant woman, they see it's a young woman, a mother on her bike, they see it's a child. And like I reported to you before, there were many cases when they were training on dogs and even on goats. So basically, the goal of those attacks are terrorizing the population, and that's by now, as you have mentioned, been verified and established independently by two major global watchdogs, and that's United Nations Committee of Inquiry in Ukraine and the Human Rights Watch. So now I was lucky enough at the point when these two teams showed interest and started to contact anybody involved uh, uh, to be there for many, many months and collect a lot of evidence. So my input, of course, these teams don't work with journalists. They do their own investigations, they verify it, they do their own interviews. But I'm grateful that I was able to provide the contact numbers and eyewitnesses and connect these teams with the victims and eyewitnesses. And so the United Nations report is 16 pages, but is very strong, I would say uncharacteristically strong language, powerful language, concluding that number of crimes associated with drone attacks, which is not just attacks and not just killing civilians, but also setting residential areas on fire by dropping incendiary devices, also remote mining by dropping banned anti-infantry mines, and so forth. There are a number of crimes discussed and demonstrated in the report, and they come to the conclusion that these are not just war crimes, but also crimes against humanity. And the distinction there is hard to understand, but I've been explained that some individual crimes like targeting a retired person and killing them is a war crime. But sustained, organized, systematic targeting of civilians is a crime against humanity. Then forceful displacement, which is the result of this attack, organized by the state, which both teams had evidence is also a crime against humanity. And there are a number of crimes there, up to 9. And so this report was published, and there was a press conference on 28th of May. And then on June 2nd, the Human Rights Watch report followed. And that's a massive 100 pages report. They did such a thorough work and went through so many interviews, and they did a fantastic job too, just as United Nations. They presented it in a web format, sort of like New York Times reporting style, where you can click on the maps, you can watch the videos, you can hear the drone sounds, you can see the model of the drones. It's very interactive, and I mean, I hesitate to use the word entertaining, but it's certainly illustrative in this macabre sort of way. But of course, they're also very formal. There's no emotive language there, just evidence, just facts, and it's horrifying. And they come to the same conclusions. They confirm war crimes, crimes against humanity, both organized by the Russian state. They tried to contact the Russian authorities in the Kremlin, of course, got no replies. Contacted the Ukrainians, got replies from them. What's interesting about the Human Rights Watch report, there's a big chapter which I want to break down and write about on the type of drones being used and also the manufacturers. So the manufacturers oftentimes are the Chinese factories and Chinese manufacturers. So the Human Rights Watch team contacted the Chinese manufacturers as well and got the response back. And so there was a bit of a correspondence. So both reports end up with recommendations, and the recommendations basically for Russia to immediately stop these attacks, and also for those responsible, for the commanders, for the operators, to be held accountable. And they maintain that there is enough to start the trial. and to put the military commandment on trial. We did get the response, Adrian, and I want to talk about it separately, because in the best Kremlin tradition, it was not a verbal response. The Human Rights Watch report aired and was published on the 2nd of June. The same day, on the 2nd of June, Ukrainian drones attacked Zaporizhia and Kherson regions following the spiderweb operation that everybody or almost everyone heard about on the 1st of June. So we can come back to the spiderweb operation, but because that was such a huge success and such, if you will, a sensation as far as war sensations go, the other operation, which was the largest Ukrainian drone attacks on the occupied territories, stayed kind of unnoticed and under the radar. And so did the reports, by the way, because it's a big deal. I mean, there's two major international bodies established of a new war crime. And we didn't get enough coverage because everybody was preoccupied with the spiderweb and retaliation and the negotiations going on in Istanbul and so forth. So we're still going through the news cycle. And on the 2nd of June, as a result of Ukrainian attacks on the Russian military infrastructure, some power substations were out of commission. And so quite a few of Ukrainians, the Russian occupied territories in Zaporizhia and Kherson region lost power. So that actually made a lot of sense, because what Ukrainians did, they cut off the Russian military of power, and they also delayed the switch of the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe, Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which has been occupied by the Russians since March 2022. It prevents Russians to switching it to their system. So there was a lot of sense, and they did not target civilians. So what happens next? Russia turns around, and on the 5th of June, there's a massive, unprecedented attack, even by Kherson standards. It starts at 5:20 in the morning, and there are 4 aerial bombs, 500 kilograms each, dropped right downtown on the central square. And first, what it does, it chops a piece of the White House, which, if you are following Ukrainian, the Russian war against Ukraine, you might be familiar with, because all the protests in Kherson were taking place in front of the building. Then all the joyful liberation scenes were taking place in front of the building. To me, this building has a very personal connection. I live in Kherson on and off, I'm based there for since 2023 for 2 years, and I'm just 5 minutes away from there. I walk by there every day. I walk to the grocery store right next door. So this grocery store was hit. My postal office where I ship things was hit and destroyed completely. And the piece of this building was missing. It looked like somebody just bit off a part of it. And apparently they were not satisfied with these results, even though it devastated the community, because from 5:20 in the morning, there were a lot of drones flying, but Khersonians are repairing everything. And then at 3:30, with a lot of my friends and a lot of my colleagues who worked with me on a documentary film, and I'll talk more about it. So a lot of my crew and my team members are at the Freedom Square, filming and live streaming and showing what happened to the White House. And at this point, the second gigantic 1,500 kilogram aerial bomb hits the building and destroys it. It collapses completely. It's a horrifying sight. Luckily, my friends were okay. They continue reported. This young couple of journalists, they had to just throw themselves on the ground. They ended up with some minor injuries, but nothing major. Our director of photography ended up with 2 heartbreaking photographs taken 18 minutes apart. The White House with a piece chopped off, and then no White House. very poignant. This photographs went all around.
Absolutely, and I know that you were personally very touched by that. I was following your posts on X about that as well, and how much that meant to you personally. Before we talk about Spider's Web and then this horrible retaliation in Kherson by Russia, I just want to dwell for a moment on the UN report on the human safari, just to underline that everything that you said is true. And the UN report said, and I'm quoting here, that civilians were targeted in various circumstances, mainly when they were outdoors, both on foot or while using any type of vehicles. And they said it was a policy, these drone attacks on ordinary civilians, that was widespread, systematic, and conducted as part of a coordinated state policy. So that goes right back to the Kremlin. Now, in between these terrible events, the human safari, which I guess is ongoing, and the devastation in Kherson, and I suppose this just illustrates the way in which drone warfare has now become such an integral part of warfare. This incredibly audacious spider's web attack by Ukraine, striking deep in the heart of Russia, and these bombers that were expected to be bombing Ukraine were themselves bombed by Ukrainian drones. And it just struck me that clearly that would have been a big blow militarily to Russia, but also psychologically, that must have been a great moment for Ukraine. And it should be stressed, no civilians were harmed in those attacks either.
Well, exactly. And that's we see here how one story flows into another. They're interconnected. And I will make this transition, finishing the Kherson story, when on the 5th of June, this attack is happening. The proxy head of the occupied territory on the other side of the Dnipro, the Kherson region, Vladimir Saldo, is on the phone with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, who says, quote unquote, he is closely monitoring the situation in Kherson, meaning he is closely watching how the civilian infrastructure in Ukrainian-controlled Kherson region, in Kherson city, is being destroyed. And then he adds, quote unquote, he praises the efficiency of the military actions. And that brings us back to the state policy, which, again, according to the United Nations report and Human Rights Watch report, can lead Putin back to The Hague and to the International Court again, because he is in charge. He's the military commander who knows of the crimes against humanity and does not stop it and confirms it. And for those who are interested more, I wrote a detailed article on that argument in Byline Times. That's my last article there. So you can see all the sources and so forth. And here again, just like you said, Adrian, we see Russians targeting civilian infrastructure and civilians by drones, aerial bombs, again and again and again, and Ukrainians targeting military of Russians. So that's the essence of spider web operation, which I feel now is being reinterpreted and gaslighted by the propagandists. And we all saw, or some of us saw, the headlines, Ukrainian dirty war, for instance, in Washington Post, and in many other respectable publications, saying that what Putin is doing now, what the Russian military are doing now, bombing Kiev or bombing and sending drones to Kharkov and the small city of Priluki and so far in Kherson, is the retaliation, and it's the revenge for the spiderwebs operation. But it is not so, because that's comparing oranges and apples. We cannot do it. The logic is broken here.
I know, I understand that totally, Zarina. And my understanding of the attacks orchestrated through Operation Spiderweb, it was just unbelievable, really. These lorries were driven into deepest Russia. Lorries then had wooden huts as if they were to be delivered maybe to make a dasher for somebody in Russia, but the drones were concealed beneath the roofs of these wooden huts. Over a period of 18 months, these were driven into Russia. And then at the exact moment, they were all together unleashed and visited this destruction on Russian airfields, airfields which it is believed were preparing for attacks into Ukraine.
Exactly. That reminds me, Adrian, my conversation with one military commander, female military commander, a while ago. And I have an article in Byline supplement about it when she compares the military operation to a symphony. And I just thought it was so beautiful because the concept of operational security, which comes up in the conversation with military experts all the time. Say, I interviewed Ben Hodges several times. Oh, it comes up again and again and again, and so often it's not understood. And unfortunately, a lot of publications, a lot of media is running around with a scoop, and that it's not making any favors to anyone. And that's what's important and incredible about the separation, that for 18 months and 9 days, they were able to keep it a secret. Nobody knew anything about it. And in that sense, this commander I interviewed said that the audience or the global community is a part of the performance. If we have this symphony metaphor, we are in the audience watching, and it's important to be silent while music is playing, because if we are starting to give advice to the conductor, it's not going to go well, it's not going to sound well. We have to be patient as journalists and as readers and audience. I'm just taking this moment to remind it. Sometimes we're not aware what is being delivered, where, or what is happening. And I have to say, most of the times we are not aware. For me personally, I'm very familiar with the ingenuity of the Ukrainian engineers, Ukrainian military. I've started a while ago, we call it Drone Fair article series for Euromaidan Press. And my last article just came up yesterday, I believe, or the day before yesterday. And that was based on my visit to a secret location. I cannot tell you where it was, somewhere in Ukraine. That's all I can tell. And that was absolutely fascinating because it's underground, and there are this young people who look like hipsters or college students, and they could be somewhere. They remind me of, back home in San Francisco. I live very close to YouTube quarters and to Silicon Valley, and that's how people look there. It's very like, everybody looks very hip, a little hipsterish, and they do, and they build in something that possibly was used in the spider web operation. And since then, I've been visiting. I also share some videos of the military units who are running their own workshops now, also building a super secret locations. So it's very hard to publish these articles because I have like 10 press officers and commanders checking in every word and so we don't disclose anything. And I respect that. That's operational security. So whatever you see coming from me, it's safe to see. It's not going to give away any future operations. What it will give you is the idea how creative Ukrainians are and how important it is, because Euromaidan Press new defense blog is called David versus Goliath. And that's the idea. How do you win the war when you have less of everything, less manpower, no money, no equipment, no weapons? Well, you think, you use your brain.
Zarina, I want to talk to you before we finish as well about why you're back in the United States, or at least what you're going to do now you're back in the States. But you mentioned a documentary. Just tell us about that.
Well, thank you so much. So there are a number of reasons why I'm here. You know, if it were up to me, I would be still in Kherson right now reporting. There's no question about it. But I have certain circumstances. I have to be here right now. And as you might know, things in America are not going that swimmingly right now. As I speak, in Los Angeles, there are massive protests. There are a lot of fights going on with ICE agents grabbing people off the street and
Those
trying.
are in case people don't know, they're the immigration control enforcement officers, and they've been
We
involved in.
We believe so. We don't know because there are a lot of masked people
Hmm.
in strange uniforms. They're almost like Putin's green, polite people. They are not marked in any way. They say they're ICE, but they don't show identification. So we don't know for a fact. And we know that the federal troops are being sent to California, and that's a whole other subject. And I will be going to the protest in Texas next Saturday, and I will be reporting from there. So we could cover it separately. It's a whole other topic.
Sure,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. No, we will also have maybe with you, but in any event, we'll be reporting on that before and after the event, absolutely. But just in case people don't know, it is kind of being billed in some places as No King's Day and a day to protest against the Trump presidency. Certainly more of that to come here on the Byline podcast, possibly with you, Zarina, if you're around. But anyway, we'll definitely cover it as I know you will. But tell me about the documentary that you're working on.
yeah, since it's a hybrid war, we see it everywhere. So we are on all fronts. And the documentary that I'm about to bring to the world, working very hard with an excellent team. Right now, as we speak, there are people in Odessa, London, Vancouver. I'm in Dallas, in Kherson, working very hard on putting last finishes, last touches to this cut of the film, and very soon I will have information on how to watch it. For now, the trailer is available on my X platform and also on my channel on YouTube. It's been there. You can watch it just 2 minutes. It gives you a pretty good idea what the film is about. Basically, it's 2 years of filming in Kherson, and it will cover the whole story of Kherson from the beginning of the full-scale invasion and up till now. And it is a story told by Chersonians. You will not see foreign journalists, you will not see me running around heroically around or talking or telling you anything. I am there as a medium. I'm bringing you the stories of these heroic, incredible people who didn't know they were heroes. They were just living their lives, different lives. They're housewives, they're entrepreneurs, businessmen, poets, journalists, young families with children, restaurant owners, just you name it. Just the city living their life. And then the war comes. And then what happens? And of course, I wasn't there during the occupation. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I were. But I arrived to Kherson. The first time it was possible after the liberation on the 14th of November 2022. And I was filming in Kherson ever since. And so we will cover by chapters everything that happened. And that, of course, includes the flood, this biblical epic flood, of which we just, well, not celebrated, but marked the second anniversary on the 6th of June, 2 days ago, right after the major square was bombed. And it coincided with this tragic anniversary where thousands and thousands were killed, and it's still underreported. So I have a lot of exclusive materials there that will be revealed and aired for the first time. I'm not going to break it here, it's in the film. But through the interviews, through the conversations with people, it's very dynamic. We follow them as they, I don't know, cook borscht, drive to their bombed business, as you know, just living their life. and talking and sharing their minds. And I was very lucky because by now I speak Ukrainian. I make mistakes, but I'm fluent. I speak Russian. I speak dialect. And Kherson is in a big part is a Russian spoken city. A lot of people are switching, but it's still spoken. So I speak all three types of languages, two languages and a dialect. And I became friends with these people. I lived with them. I went, as I mentioned many times, to yoga studios, to the theater. So you will see that. You will see the premieres under bomb in a yoga class. There's a surprise there, like a secret hidden inside the film, because there's a dance. You will see it in a trailer. There's a choreography. There's a reason why it's there. But what I can tell you, for instance, the music, the original score written for the film, is written by Khersonian composer who joined the resistance and became a partisan during the war. The director of photography lost his house on the other side of the Dnipro River because it's occupied by the Russians. He had to flee. And every single person there who's making this film is involved and suffered from drones, from bombs, from occupation. And it's been an incredible journey. I'm very grateful for the team, the color grading and upscaling, Jason Parkinson. He's from London, he's British, and he's award-winning Getty videographer. But he lived in Kherson for a year, not a year, for a month in a basement. So when we were choosing the color, he knew exactly what colors they were. And we have a sound engineer, so we will have all the names, of course, and interviews with the cast and with the crew. But he's Ukrainian, living in Canada, and he's also so passionate to be working on the film. And by the way, one of executive producers, Heidi Kuda, is also our Byline team. She writes for Byline Times, Byline Supplement. I'm sure you interviewed her as well.
Oh, many times. I saw her in Birmingham. She came to see me a few days
Yes.
ago. So brilliant. Well, listen, Zarina, it sounds like an amazing film. And when that's ready to be aired, we will, of course, let people know. I'm sure you'll be back in Ukraine as soon as you possibly can, bringing us more news from the front line. Good luck on the 14th of June. In case people don't know why that's been chosen, that is the date of President Trump's birthday. So 50 states, 50 protests, one president, isn't it? It's 50-51.
I
No.
feel so ashamed even talking about this, Adrian.
Okay, well, listen, we'll talk more about that in the days to come. But thank you, Zarina. Before we go, I just want to mention as well, obviously, we've got Zarina's film coming soon. We'll let you know about that. But also the Byline Festival, which is at Keele University between June 11th and 13th. Some fantastic guests, some great lineups there. People like Rosie Holt, John Mitchinson, Carol Vorderman, Peter Jukes, our founding editor, Carol Cadwallader, Sergei Christo, who was involved with Carol and Peter Jukes on the Westminster Spiring podcast. So many great guests as well. Yasmin Alibi Brown, Asif Kapadia. He's a top movie director. So all that to come at the Byline Festival. Head over to bylinefestival.com for more details. And thank you for listening to this episode of the Byline podcast. You can read more from Zarina both at bylinesupplement.com and in the Byline Times, our fabulous monthly news publication. Do check it out. Get a subscription if you can. Details are at bylinetimes.com. That's at bylinetimes.com. The Byline Times contains the best of our online articles with content that you can't read anywhere else. This episode of the podcast was produced in Birmingham by me, Adrian Goldberg, and Harvey White. We'll see you again very soon. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Zarina, and bye-bye.
Thank you.